The Supreme Court has decided not to get its knickers in a twist over girls being forced to wear skirts. Well, they were fragile vessels, according to the charter school in North Carolina, but it is nice to see that the wig-wearing, tight-wearing Supreme Court judges of old haven't decided to make a comeback by getting their knickers in a twist. So SCOTUS has decided that they're going to not hear the case of skirts for girls and skirts only for girls, and yeah, it's one of those things, I guess. So Helen, have you got your knickers in a twist?
Oh, I don't know. It depends what week it is. So I'm so sick of this misogyny and like this fragile vessel language, and like you need to treat girls more gently that the article said, and all this type of crap. I'm over it a lot because again, it's just the religion wanting to enforce their values and perceptions onto other people, whether we like it or not. And I was just not a fan at all. And so I'm a little peeved, a little bit peeved. What do you think, Kelley, about this? Because I know you have an opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, I don't think we can say it enough how disgusting the ideology from this charter school to begin with is. It's the same garbage that we hear time and time and time again. And it is just completely demeaning to an entire group to half of our world. It's just basically saying you don't get to make decisions for yourself because you're actually not even capable. Like, because you're less than, we have to put all these rules on you to make sure that you meet up. So yeah, it's so frustrating that that's just something else that we have to hear about. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this article, in this ruling. I think charter schools are definitely a thing for me that I've been focused on for a long time now. So they definitely get my knickers in a twist, I'll say. What do you think on this, Kelley?
I had two thoughts about this. One of them I'm going to talk about right away because here was a state-funded charter school, and I'm wondering how they could have some kind of a policy that was like this to begin with when they were state-funded, right? Yeah. So I wanted to start looking into who this school was, and I found all kinds of cool stuff, actually. They were started by it's called the Leland Charter School, and it's run by the Roger Bacon Academy. Bacon, of course, was a tasty cured pork meat from the medieval. Actually, he was a British philosopher, and
Church
a lot
of
of
Bacon
people.
For everybody, it's the Church of Bacon now.
Church of Bacon.
Some would even say he was the father of the scientific method and empiricism, but he was also a Franciscan monk, and I think it's important to remember that. And interestingly, the school's website does have a Who Was Roger Bacon page, and there's nothing in there about him ever being a friar. And I thought that was kind of weird. But I went to the Academy's website because I wanted to learn more about the Academy itself. And while there's really no outright mention of religion anywhere on their website, there's a few red flags for me that jumped up. Like in the school's philosophy, it says, quote unquote, "We endeavor to inculcate the four classical virtues of prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, and the three attributes of faith, hope, and charity. Each person associated with the Academy, student, faculty, and staff, is accountable for ensuring that his or her actions exemplify and are in accord with these virtues." Now, I don't know that faith, hope, and charity belong in a scientific, and that's what they're trying to push it off as, like a scientific charter school, belong there. So that was one of the red flags to me. But I saw some other stuff, but I don't want to take up all the time. Phoebe, you want to take it from here?
You haven't got a clue, you Americans. You are late to the party here. We, in the rest of the Commonwealth, have been doing this properly for years. When I went to school, it was skirts for girls and trousers for boys, and it was trousers in the summer, and I really loathed that it was trousers in the summer for the boys, and it was skirts, and it was weird, funky gingham dresses for the girls, which was just very odd. But you are just late to the party here. You are really late to the party. I mean, we have seen protests in the UK about these policies by students. There was a boy in Devon who protested about not being allowed to wear shorts. So he decided the uniform policy says you can wear a skirt. It didn't say that you had to be a girl to wear a skirt. So he rocked up and protested, saying, look, you say that skirts are allowed for girls. Skirts are allowed for everybody. So he rocked up in a skirt. And, you know, that's how we do it in Britain. And then you've got the other extreme of skirts being measured for length in schools in the UK. Literally, we have, in some cases, lines of students and a ruler, much like this one. And the length of the ruler is the length the hemline is allowed to be above the knee in some cases, or the calf in some cases. And they would literally line all the girls up and measure the skirt. And if the skirt was too long or too short, you were told to sod off and go and change it. And that has been happening until like 2023 in the UK, in public schools in the UK, in state schools in the UK, in free schools in the UK. Free schools are our equivalent of charter schools. So they're like pseudo-independent from the local authority, but they're funded by private people and they're funded by the government and they've got freedom to do what they like. They're not quite like academies, which are just like, here's a sponsor. It's like, go run your academy. But you've been doing it all wrong. New Zealand, they went mad, went absolutely bonkers over this because they had the same arguments in New Zealand that was used by this school. And it just blew up in New Zealand. How dare women be treated like sex objects and men be treated like they're uncontrollable sex-craved lunatics? Because this is the other underlying thing that people aren't getting here. Yes, it's misogynistic to have the girls forced to wear skirts, but the reasons behind it are incredibly misandry-based because it's going... Boys are just sex-craved, rape-wanting lunatics. And this is the madness. It is not just sexism against the girls here. It's sexism against the boys here. Because the stereotypes have gone absolutely round the loony bin with this one. And they've gone potty. This is all iceberg and no tip. This whole thing that we've got going here. And before I blow this iceberg to pieces, Helen... tell me your take on the misandry aspect of this.
I'm not surprised as someone that grew up Catholic, and I'm not surprised this is coming out of the church. I am not surprised that they're saying like, well, she's a girl and she has to wear proper clothing because that's important, you know, and all this shit, like this just is shit. And because what's so terrible about it is that these messages still get perpetrated. And to perpetuate, it will happen. They keep going out. And we get people that then grow up having to unpack all this stuff in their brains and being like, can I wear a skirt that's, above my calf? Can I? A little bit, can I wear something that's shorter and feel confident about it and have to dig through all that because the misogyny is just in the system, and I'm really, really glad that they did not hear this, because if they had, I would have been so disappointed. I'm just my feeling. That's how you think I'm an SR. You got more to say? No, you do.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about charter schools, because there's a reason that this case was coming through with a charter school as opposed to a strictly private or public school. So we've alluded to it a little bit, but I want to explain for people who aren't completely sure. So this is something that is very much happening in my state right now. Our governor is very hardcore intent on pushing more and more children into charter schools. And there's a couple of different reasons why that's the case. And one reason is specifically due to this gray area that charter schools sit in. Charter schools are both considered public and private schools. And what that means is that they receive the benefits from being a public institution. Thus, they receive the funding, they receive, various access to things that you can't get access to when you're part of the private school system. But they also receive all of the benefits of the private school system, meaning that they are not required to follow the same guidelines when it comes to how to treat children and students, how to treat employees, staff in general, and what they have to teach. And this is the weird problem here. Okay. And I'm definitely I want to get, the rest of y'all's thoughts on this, but I think I have a sneaking suspicion that the reason that this case was declined by the Supreme Court, because it wasn't ruled on, and that's deeply important. They didn't take the case and say, yes, here's our understanding. They
denied certiorari. Certiorari was just denied, and it was one of those shadow docket cases where they just went, sod off, we'll deal with this another day.
So the precedent that is technically set by that is insanely weak. And I think, again, this is just my personal views, you guys. This is just me saying this. I think one reason that the case was not taken was specifically due to the fact that the ruling would not have had the impact hoped for. And I think I have some good reasons to believe that. There are a lot of different cases right now going throughout the country regarding charter schools. If this case were to have been ruled the other way, it could have opened the door to just outright teaching religion in what is essentially technically a public school. But because that ruling wouldn't have been strong enough, I feel that's probably more so why they didn't take it than them saying this was already decided correctly by the lower courts. But what do you think on that, Kelley?
I think that's really an interesting take, and you're right. It doesn't. It certainly doesn't have the same impact geographically either, because the ruling now is only for that court district.
Absolutely,
it doesn't go across the whole United States. It's only in that one area. So yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I hadn't even thought of that. Kudos to you for coming up with that. One of the things that yeah, right. One of the things that I thought about, because I think one of the judges did, when turning it down, said something about the children having basic human rights. But in the year 2002, they had another case ruling with a student, and they denied the student's civil rights in that one. It was Morse v. Frederick. It was a pretty interesting case in 2002. Some of you may know it as the Bongs for Jesus case that went to the SCOTUS. Joseph Frederick
was for Jesus. That was pretty good, that case. Bong for Jesus. For those of you who don't know, Bong for Jesus was a free speech case.
Yes, it is. But free speech is one of our constitutional rights, right? So Joseph Frederick was a student. He had made a banner that said Bongs for Jesus and held it up during a parade. He was not on school grounds. He was not at a school function. And the principal of the school came along and took the banner away from him, and he was kicked out of school for having it. He took it all the way to SCOTUS because he thought he had a constitutional right to free speech, and SCOTUS denied it. They said just because he was a student, he did not have that right. So I find it interesting that in one case they rule students have rights, and in the other case they don't. It just, this inconsistency gets me. That's all. I find that weird.
That's always pissed me off. That schools believe that when you leave the school grounds, the school still has some control over you. That's really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Homework is another thing that's really pissed me off with schools, because schools think that they can invade your home life with things that they should be doing in the school ground. They believe that you should be a model for the school. No, sod that. You don't have a choice of which school you go to. You are required in the UK, the Elementary and Primary Education Act and the Secondary Education Act, to go to school. You cannot have it both ways. You can't have schools just coming along and go, yes, we're going to dictate children's lives inside and out. And in the UK, which I can see America is slowly drifting towards this nonsense of trying to control children through the state, not the parents, which is what these people don't quite realise with these nonsensical things of you can't say this, you can't say that, outside of school grounds, in your own private time. It is the state taking over the control of the children here. So in the UK, you have very ridiculous and strict uniform rules in schools, which dictate haircut length for boys and hair colour for girls and jewellery and all this stuff, which is all absolute, complete and utter horse manure. Because it's the school dictating, like a military junta, what you can do for those 39 weeks that you are required to be in that classroom, when you spend more time outside of the classroom and you don't have a choice to be there. This is the ultimate in the state being the diktat that is running the lives of children and not parents. This is just absurd.
Yeah.
I
Helen?
can argue with you. No, you couldn't have said it better myself. And it is funny because I remember I went to private school. I went to a private Catholic school growing up, and the education, and then I went to public school, and the night and day between the education I got at the Catholic school versus the public school was completely different. I got diagnosed with ADHD for the first time when I went to public school. They didn't recognize it before. They just told me I needed to calm down and crap. So, and the fact that now, these charter schools are, skirting the lines, and then if we're getting into some fuzzy waters with mixing up public and private funding, because at what point do you say you can't say that? You can't be preaching at kids. And that's where I'm not really liking where this is going, and it makes me feel funny.
Helen, you weren't ADHD. You just needed more Jesus. That's all.
That's right. I did.
It was all the demons in you.
Yes.
It's not just Jesus you needed. You need Yahweh, you need Muhammad, you need Buddha, you need them all. You need to take them all in. Because let's look at it this way. It's not just that religion you need to make sure you know. Because that religion, it may not be the correct one. So you need to take in all of those religions, because that way you can make sure that when Judgment Day comes, you can go, I select this religion. Ding! And that can get me through wherever I'm going. And it's just... This is what gets me. It's my religion is the only religion that is going to get you into eternity forever. Whereas there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of religions out there, and there are hundreds and millions of people that go sod religion and go and sod it all up your backside, and it's made no difference whatsoever, and it'll continue until someone turns around and goes, here's your head, here's your hair, bash them together and go, what are you talking about? You're creating nonsense in the world. Stop telling children to be anything other than children.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, in the US right now, one of the biggest battlegrounds for the Christian nationalists in their attempt to try and break down the separation of church and state is this battleground right here, unfortunately. Charter schools have become a huge place for Christian nationalists to push their agenda. We saw Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education under Donald Trump, outright say that her obligation was to make more children Christian. That is what she said. Mm-hmm. It is outright. They are not hiding it. This is definitely a place that everybody out there that believes in the values of separation of church and state and secularism, this is absolutely a place to pay attention to. Because again, I know firsthand in my state This is a huge push. And I hope that we don't see more of this coming down the line. But unfortunately, I am worried that we probably will see some more cases in this vein in the future, because this is the playbook that we've seen from the far right. So as always, folks, we've got more information, and we'll be bringing you updates as we get them. But if you'd like some more news in the meantime, click here.